The champagne glass slipped from my hand the moment I saw them. My fiancé, Derek, and my sister Paige, tangled together on our couch. Her red dress bunched around her waist. They didn't hear me come in. I stood frozen in the doorway of our apartment, shopping bags from the bakery still hanging from my wrists. The cake samples for our wedding that was 3 weeks away. Derek's hand was in her hair, and she was laughing. That high-pitched giggle she always used around men she wanted. My chest felt like it was caving in. I must have made a sound because they both turned. Paige's eyes went wide, but Derek just stared at me with this blank expression. No guilt. No panic. Just annoyed that I'd interrupted. "Helen," he said flatly, not even bothering to move away from her. My voice came out as a whisper. "How long?" Paige sat up slowly, adjusting her dress with steady hands. "Does it matter?" she said, her voice cold. That's when I knew this wasn't some drunken mistake. This was planned, deliberate. They'd been doing this for a while. I stumbled backward into the hallway, my brain struggling to process what I was seeing. Derek stood up, tucking in his shirt like this was just another Tuesday. "We were going to tell you after the wedding," he said casually, like he was discussing dinner plans. My sister finally stood, smoothing her hair. "You were going to marry him and then tell me," I choked out. Paige shrugged. "We didn't want to waste the deposits. Derek said the venue alone cost $15,000. I felt bile rise in my throat. They'd planned to let me marry him, knowing they were together, knowing they'd continue behind my back. "Get out," I whispered. Neither of them moved. "It's my apartment," Derek said. "My name's on the lease." He was right. I'd moved into his place 2 years ago, gave up my own lease to save money for the wedding. The wedding I'd planned every detail of while he was sleeping with my sister. "Then I'll go," I said, my voice shaking. I grabbed my purse and walked out, leaving everything behind. I drove aimlessly for an hour before pulling into a coffee shop parking lot. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely hold my phone. I had nobody to call. My parents had died in a car accident 4 years ago, and Paige was my only sibling. Derek's friends were his friends. Our mutual friends were really his friends who tolerated me. I'd let my own friendships fade, too busy planning a future with a man who was betraying me. I opened my banking app and stared at the numbers. $832 in my personal account. Everything else was in our joint account, the one Derek controlled. The wedding fund, my savings, all of it. I'd been so stupid, so trusting. A text came through from Paige. "Don't be dramatic. You'll get over it." My hands stopped shaking. Something cold settled in my chest, replacing the panic. I wasn't going to cry anymore. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to burn their world down, piece by piece. I checked into a cheap motel on the edge of town and sat on the bed, staring at the stained wallpaper. My mind was racing, but for the first time in hours, I felt clear. I pulled out my laptop and started making a list. Everything I knew about Derek and Paige, every secret, every lie, every weakness. Derek was a financial advisor at Morrison and Associates, a prestigious firm downtown. He'd always been so careful about his image, so concerned with appearing successful and trustworthy. His clients were wealthy, conservative types who valued family and integrity. What would they think if they knew what kind of man he really was? And Paige. She worked as an event coordinator for the mayor's office, a position she'd landed through connections and charm. She was always networking, always posting on social media about her perfect life. Her reputation was everything to her. I opened my photo library and started scrolling. I had 3 years of pictures with Derek, birthday parties, holiday gatherings, and there, in the background of a photo from last Christmas, was Paige's hand on Derek's shoulder. Her fingers too familiar, too comfortable. I spent the next morning doing research. I created a new email address under a fake name and started digging through Derek's digital footprint. He'd always been careless with passwords, using the same one for everything. His mother's maiden name plus his birth year. Within an hour, I was in his email. What I found made my blood run cold. Messages between him and Paige, going back 18 months. They'd been together since before he proposed to me. The proposal had been fake, a performance. There were emails discussing how to handle me, how to keep me calm and compliant until after the wedding. "She's so easy to manipulate," Derek had written. "Just tell her you love her and she'll do anything." Paige's response: "She always has been. Even when we were kids, I could get her to take the blame for everything." I saved every email, every photo, every message. Then I found something else. Derek had been skimming money from elderly clients, moving small amounts into offshore accounts. I printed everything and organized it into folders. The affair, the theft, the manipulation. Then I got dressed in the only professional outfit I'd brought and drove to Morrison and Associates. I asked for Derek's boss, Mr. Morrison himself. His secretary tried to turn me away, but I said it was about client fraud. That got me through the door. Mr. Morrison was a silver-haired man with sharp eyes. He listened as I laid out everything, showing him the emails, the transaction records I'd found in Derek's files. His face grew darker with each page. "Miss Helen," he said finally, "these are serious accusations." I met his eyes. "Then investigate them. Check the accounts yourself." "I'll wait." He made a phone call. 20 minutes later, Derek was called into the office. I'll never forget the look on his face when he saw me sitting there. Documents spread across the desk. The color drained completely. "What is this?" he stammered. Mr. Morrison's voice was ice. "We're going to find out." I left the office 2 hours later with a copy of everything. Derek had been suspended pending investigation. Mr. Morrison assured me that if the accusations proved true, Derek would face criminal charges. But I wasn't done. I drove to City Hall and asked to speak with the mayor's chief of staff. I had a different folder for them, screenshots of Paige's messages, including ones where she'd used her position to secure contracts for Derek's friends, accepting kickbacks in return. Small-scale corruption, but corruption nonetheless. The chief of staff was a woman named Janet Torres, and she did not look pleased. "Your sister works here," she said slowly, reading through the messages. I nodded. "I know, but I thought you should know what she's been doing." Janet's jaw tightened. "Leave this with me." As I walked out of City Hall, my phone exploded with texts. Derek panicking, saying I'd ruined his life. Paige furious, calling me every name she could think of. I blocked them both and kept driving. That evening I went to my old neighborhood, to the house where Mrs. Chen lived. She'd been my neighbor growing up, and she'd always been kind to me after my parents died. I knocked on her door, and when she opened it, her face lit up. "Helen, come in, come in." We sat in her kitchen, and I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, her weathered hands wrapped around a cup of tea. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Your mother told me once that you were too kind for your own good. But kindness and weakness are not the same thing." She reached into a drawer and pulled out a business card. "This is my nephew, Marcus. He's a lawyer. If you need help getting your money back, he'll do it right." I took the card, tears finally spilling over. "Thank you," I whispered. She patted my hand. "You deserve better than what they gave you, child. Now go get it." Marcus Chen turned out to be a shark in a suit. I met him the next morning and explained the joint account situation. "Did you contribute to that account?" he asked. I nodded. Most of my paychecks went straight there. I'd say 60% of the money is mine. Marcus smiled, and it wasn't a friendly smile. Then we can freeze the account and force him to prove which funds are his. Given his current legal troubles, that's going to be difficult. We filed the paperwork that afternoon. By evening, Derek's access to our joint account was suspended. I got another flood of angry texts before I blocked his new number too. But Marcus wasn't done. "What about the wedding deposits?" he asked. I blinked. "What about them?" He leaned forward. "Who paid for them?" I thought back. I did. Most of them. Anyway, the venue, the photographer, the caterer, all my credit card. Marcus grinned. "Then we're getting refunds. You're the one who contracted them. And since the groom committed fraud against you, you have grounds to cancel without penalty." Over the next week, Marcus worked magic. The venue refunded $12,000. The photographer refunded $3,000. The caterer, the florist, the DJ, all of it came back. In total, I recovered $28,000. Money I'd saved from years of working as a nurse, money I'd planned to use for our future. Now it was mine again, and mine alone. Derek's investigation moved quickly. Mr. Morrison had hired forensic accountants, and they found even more than I'd uncovered. Derek had stolen over $200,000 from 5 different clients. He was arrested on a Wednesday morning. I didn't go to watch, but Marcus sent me a text with a photo of Derek in handcuffs being led out of the office building. The news picked up the story. Local financial advisor arrested for elder fraud. Derek's face was plastered across every local channel, and Paige's situation wasn't much better. Her boss had launched an investigation, and while her corruption was smaller scale, it was enough to get her fired. She'd lost her prestigious job, her reputation ruined. 2 weeks after everything exploded, I was sitting in a new apartment, small but mine, when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Helen?" The voice was unfamiliar. "This is Richard Morrison, Derek's former boss." My stomach tightened. "Yes?" His tone was serious. "I wanted to thank you personally. One of the clients Derek stole from was my mother. She's 83 years old, and he took nearly $60,000 from her retirement account." I felt my chest constrict. "I'm so sorry," Mr. Morrison continued. "Because of you, we caught him before he could disappear with the money. We've recovered most of it. My mother wants to meet you." I didn't know what to say. "She doesn't need to thank me." He laughed softly. "She doesn't want to thank you. She wants to offer you a job. She runs a nonprofit that helps victims of financial fraud. She thinks you'd be perfect." I sat there stunned. A job. A purpose. Something that came from the worst moment of my life. I met Eleanor Morrison at a cafe downtown. She was elegant despite her age, with sharp eyes that reminded me of her son. "You have courage," she said, stirring her tea. "Most people would have walked away. Quietly." I shook my head. "I was angry," she smiled. "Anger can be useful if you point it in the right direction. I started my foundation after my husband died, and I discovered he'd been cheating on me for 30 years. I wanted to hurt him, but he was already dead. So I hurt the systems that let men like him thrive." She slid a folder across the table. "This is what we do. We help people who've been victimized by people they trusted. Financial abuse, fraud, manipulation. We give them resources, legal help, emotional support, and we make sure the perpetrators face consequences." I opened the folder. The salary was modest, but fair. The work was meaningful. "When can I start?" I asked. Eleanor's smile widened. "Monday." My first week at the Morrison Foundation was overwhelming in the best way. I met dozens of people who'd been through what I had, betrayed by spouses, family members, business partners. Each story was different, but the pain was the same. I helped a woman named Grace, whose husband had gambled away their house. I connected a man named Thomas with a lawyer after his brother stole his inheritance. Every person I helped felt like a piece of myself healing. But on Friday afternoon, Eleanor called me into her office. "I have a special case," she said. "It involves your sister." My blood went cold. "What about her?" Eleanor handed me a file. "Three women have come forward. Paige has been scamming them through a fake investment scheme. She's been taking money, promising returns, and then disappearing. It started before she lost her job." I stared at the documents. Paige had stolen over $50,000 from three women who thought they were investing in a business opportunity. I spent the weekend reading through the case files. The women Paige had scammed were all single mothers, working hard to build better lives for their kids. She'd met them through social media, presented herself as a successful businesswoman, and promised them financial freedom. They'd trusted her, given her their savings, and she'd vanished with it. On Monday, I met with the three women, Jennifer, Maya, and Claudia. They sat in our conference room, exhausted and defeated. "I just want my money back," Jennifer said, her voice breaking. "I have 2 kids. That money was supposed to be for their college fund." Maya nodded. She seemed so professional, so trustworthy. I looked at them. These women who reminded me of myself just a month ago. "We're going to get your money back," I said firmly, "and we're going to make sure she can't do this to anyone else." Eleanor had already contacted the district attorney's office. With the evidence we'd gathered, they were building a fraud case. The day Paige was arrested, I was sitting in Eleanor's office. We watched the news together as cameras caught my sister being led out of her apartment in handcuffs. She looked smaller somehow, her face pale and scared. For a moment, just a moment, I felt sorry for her. Then I remembered her hand on Derek's shoulder, her cold voice saying, "Does it matter?" The pity evaporated. "How do you feel?" Eleanor asked quietly. I thought about it. "Like I'm finally breathing again." The case moved quickly. Paige's lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the DA wasn't interested. Not with 3 victims and clear evidence of intentional fraud. Derek's trial was scheduled for next month. He was facing 10 years for the elder fraud charges. Paige would likely get 5 years for her scams. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I just felt tired. Eleanor must have seen it on my face. "Justice isn't always satisfying," she said, "but it's necessary." 3 months after everything began, I was finally feeling like myself again. I'd made friends at the foundation, real friends who valued me for who I was. I'd started therapy, working through the betrayal and learning to trust again. And I'd moved into a better apartment, one with big windows that let in the morning sun. Then one Tuesday, Marcus called me. "Helen, we need to talk about the joint account." My stomach dropped. "What about it?" He sighed. "Derek's lawyer is claiming you stole from him. They're trying to flip the narrative, say you're the one who destroyed his life out of jealousy." I felt rage boil up inside me. "That's insane," Marcus agreed. "It is, but we need to be prepared. His trial starts in 2 weeks, and his defense strategy is apparently to paint you as a vindictive ex who made false accusations." I hung up and immediately called Eleanor. She listened carefully, then said something that surprised me. "Good. Let him try." I blinked. "Good?" She smiled that sharp smile. "The more he talks, the more he buries himself." Eleanor was right. Derek's lawyer made a critical mistake by putting him on the stand. I sat in the courtroom gallery, watching as the prosecutor tore apart his testimony. "So you're claiming Miss Helen fabricated bank records?" the prosecutor asked. Derek nodded eagerly. "She was angry I wanted to end the relationship." The prosecutor pulled out a document. "These records were obtained directly from your bank by forensic accountants hired by Morrison and Associates. Are you suggesting they fabricated them too? Derek's face went red. I don't know how she did it, but she set me up. The prosecutor smiled. Let's talk about the emails then. The ones between you and Miss Paige Donovan, discussing how to manipulate Helen. Were those fabricated? Derek stammered. He had no answer. The jury watched him fall apart, and I watched with them, feeling nothing but cold satisfaction. When the prosecutor showed the emails on a screen, reading Derek's words aloud, several jurors looked disgusted. The verdict came back, after only 4 hours of deliberation, guilty on all counts. Derek stood there as the judge read the sentence: 12 years in federal prison, restitution to all victims, and a permanent ban from working in finance. He turned and looked at me across the courtroom. The hatred in his eyes was pure and venomous, but I didn't look away. I held his gaze until the bailiff led him out. Outside the courthouse, Mr. Morrison found me. My mother wanted me to tell you something, he said. She says you didn't just save her money, you saved her faith in people. I felt tears prick my eyes. I just told the truth. He shook his head. You did more than that. You could have walked away quietly, taken your hurt, and disappeared. Instead, you stood up. That takes real strength. As I walked to my car, I realized he was right. I hadn't wanted closure when this started. I'd wanted revenge. But somewhere along the way, it had become about something bigger. Paige's trial was scheduled for 2 months later, but she took a plea deal: 5 years in prison, restitution to her victims, and a fraud conviction on her permanent record. I didn't go to her sentencing. I couldn't. Instead, I met with Jennifer, Maya, and Claudia at a coffee shop. The foundation had helped them recover most of their money through the criminal restitution process. Thank you, Jennifer said, tears streaming down her face. I don't know what we would have done without you. Maya squeezed my hand. You gave us hope when we had none. Claudia was quieter, but she hugged me tightly. You turned your pain into something beautiful. That's powerful. As I drove home that night, I thought about what Claudia had said. Power. I'd started this journey feeling powerless, destroyed by 2 people I'd loved and trusted. But I'd found something stronger than revenge. I'd found purpose. The power to help others. The power to make a difference. 6 months after that terrible day when I walked in on Derek and Paige, I was promoted to senior advocate at the foundation. Eleanor pulled me into her office with a bottle of champagne. You've helped 43 people in 6 months, she said, pouring us both a glass. That's remarkable. I shook my head. I'm just doing what anyone would do. She gave me that look, the one that said she didn't believe me. Most people wouldn't. Most people would stay bitter and angry. You transformed your experience into advocacy. We clinked glasses, and I realized she was right. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter. I looked at Derek and Paige now and felt nothing but pity. They'd thrown away everything real for something hollow. Meanwhile, I'd built a life I was proud of. That evening, I went to dinner with some friends from the foundation. Sarah, Tom, and Keisha had become my closest confidants. We laughed and told stories, and I realized I was genuinely happy for the first time in years. 1 year after everything fell apart, I received a letter in the mail. Prison postage. My hand shook as I opened it. The handwriting was Paige's. Helen, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I don't blame you. I've had a lot of time to think about what I did, and I'm ashamed. I destroyed our relationship for a man who wasn't worth it. I hurt you in ways I can't take back. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. I see now what I couldn't see before. You were always the strong one, the good one. I was jealous of that. My whole life, Mum and Dad were so proud of you. I wanted to tear you down because I couldn't build myself up. I know now that was wrong. I hope someday you can find peace. I read it 3 times sitting on my couch. Part of me wanted to crumple it up. But another part, a bigger part, felt something shift inside. I wasn't ready to forgive her. Maybe I never would be. But I didn't hate her anymore either. I showed the letter to my therapist, Dr. Ramos, during our next session. She read it carefully, then looked at me. "How does this make you feel?" I thought about it. Sad, mostly. Sad for who we could have been as sisters if she hadn't been so caught up in competition. Dr. Ramos nodded. "Are you going to respond?" I shook my head. "Not now, maybe not ever. But I'm not angry about the letter. That's progress, right?" She smiled. "That's significant progress. You've done incredible work this year, Helen. You've processed trauma, rebuilt your life, and found meaning in helping others. You should be proud." I left the session feeling lighter than I had in months. That weekend, I volunteered at a women's shelter, something I'd started doing in my spare time. I taught a workshop on financial literacy and protecting yourself from fraud. 12 women attended, all of them survivors of abuse in various forms. They listened intently as I shared my story, not all of it, just enough to show them I understood. At the Foundation's annual gala, Eleanor asked me to speak. I stood at the podium looking out at 200 faces, donors, volunteers, people we'd helped. My voice shook at first, but then it steadied. A year ago, I thought my life was over. I'd been betrayed by the 2 people I trusted most. I felt powerless and broken. But then I discovered something important. We get to choose what we do with our pain. We can let it destroy us, or we can transform it into something meaningful. I told them about the Foundation's work, about the people we'd helped. I didn't mention Derek or Paige by name, but everyone knew my story. When I finished, the room erupted in applause. Eleanor hugged me tightly. "Your parents would be so proud," she whispered. That night, I drove to the cemetery where my parents were buried. I sat between their headstones and talked to them like I used to. "I wish you could see who I've become," I said softly. "I think you'd like her." 2 months later, I got a call from Marcus. "Helen, Derek's trying to appeal his sentence. His lawyer is claiming the investigation was biased because of your relationship with the Morrison family." I felt a flicker of the old anger, but it faded quickly. "Can they do that?" Marcus laughed. "They can try. It won't work. The evidence against him was airtight, and multiple agencies were involved in the investigation. But I wanted you to know." I thanked him and hung up. The news didn't ruin my day like it would have before. I'd stopped letting Derek have power over my emotions. That evening, I had dinner with a man named James. We'd met at the Foundation. He was a lawyer who volunteered with us. We'd been on 3 dates, taking things slow. He knew my whole story, and he'd never once made me feel broken because of it. "You okay?" he asked, noticing I was quiet. I smiled. "Yeah, just thinking about how far I've come." He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You're pretty incredible, you know that." 18 months after that terrible day, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, getting ready for work. I looked different now, stronger, happier, more myself than I'd been in years. My phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor. "Big case today. Ready?" I texted back. "Always." As I drove to the office, I thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the pain, the anger, the investigation, the trials, the justice, the healing, the growth, the purpose I'd found. I'd wanted closure when this started. I'd wanted to understand why Derek and Paige had hurt me. But what I'd found was so much more valuable. I'd found power, not the power to destroy, though I'd certainly done some of that, but the power to rebuild, the power to help others, the power to choose who I wanted to be. Derek was in prison. Paige was in prison. And I was free. Free from their betrayal, free from the pain, free from the person I'd been when I was with them. I pulled into the parking lot and grabbed my briefcase. Inside were files for 3 new clients who needed help. People who were where I'd been, feeling powerless and alone. But they wouldn't be alone. I'd make sure of that. Because I'd learned the most important lesson of all. Closure doesn't come from understanding why people hurt you. It comes from deciding they can't hurt you anymore. That was my power, and nobody could ever take it away.